So I've helped a lot of people hit Unreal on my Discord by showing them different routes I've used to hit the top ranks in rocket racing. This is part 2 of the series. If you missed part 1, go click that eye icon in the top right. We're starting where we left off, on Cliffrunner. I always start by getting a back and forth chain drift. Then I drift into the wall and air flip right rather than chain drift so I can stay as close to the inside track as possible. I use one turbo here and then do a flip. As you can see, it kind of launches me. This happens a lot when you have a turbo and you do a side flip. I then flip over here, drifting through here, trying to maintain my speed and waiting for my speed to drop. As soon as it does, I drift left and then right. I also try to get this mag flip as often as I can, however currently at my skill level I normally get it about once or twice per game. Again, just focus on your minimum speed. As you can see, I wait till my minimum speed starts to drop, then I release. So we're at 800, we're just drifting back and forth. We see we drop down to the minimum speed again, we release. We turbo, go up on the ceiling, and hit this pad. We wait till our minimum speed starts to drop. It has dropped, we release. Again, drift into the wall, air flip right, and then continue drifting left. Then, do one long drift around here, flip, and continue drifting. Wait till your speed starts to drop, release, then continue. Air flipping left gives you a little, like air flipping in the air sideways, gives you a little bit of extra momentum that doesn't really show up on the stats, but does help. So this one I accidentally attached the wall, but that's still fine. It's still technically faster than it just driving normally. So again, try to do longer drifts rather than short drifts. Like watch this section here. I go 1, 2, 3. Not like back and forth spamming. You want to try to do as long of drifts as possible. Every time you switch back and forth, watch my meter, it actually pauses for a split second. So what you want to do is make sure you're doing as long as possible drifts. Again, drift around this spot, air flip right, wait for it to start to drop and release. Okay, we're coming up to the final section right here. Try to drive on the ground as long as possible. As soon as you start to get about 570 speed, again, release. I always release that rather than carry it forward, by the way. If you notice, I only am in the air with like a millimeter of drift. So even though we only had exactly one turbo, if we use it right there, we'll actually still have enough to build another one by the final point here. So again, we drift back and forth, and as you can see, we easily build another turbo. So don't be afraid of using one at the end there. And that's the route I use in Top 50 Unreal and Cliffrunner 1. On to Puddle Jumper 1, which is one of my stronger maps in my opinion that I normally do pretty good at. So as you can see, we got a time of 2:30 there on Cliffrunner, which is definitely respectable. Try to compare it to the times you normally get in ranked games. Puddle Jumper 1, the main focus will be long back and forth drifts. We're going to release as soon as our minimum speed starts to drop, and that's going to be our main focus, and I will keep reiterating it. So getting a long drifts back and forth, and watch our speed. We're waiting till it starts to drop. It's about to drop, we release. This section I always break up into 2 parts. One drift right, one drift left, release. One drift left, one drift right. We do that exact same pattern on every single lap. This is the one shortcut on Puddle Jumper 1 where if you fly up, you can actually cut that really sharp. In the tunnel I land on the left hand side of it and then drift left and right. Here I try to take this as close as possible and release just as I'm getting close to the lava. And then I turbo around the final part, which leaves me nice with about 1100 speed going through here. I air flip off here because our speed is 800. There's no need to release yet. We wait till we release. So again, the same pattern here. One long drift right, one long drift left, release. Same thing the other way. One long left, one long right. Then jump up, and I kind of feather my jumps. As you notice, I don't just hold it down. And then you have to make sure you air flip. This section, if you can do this, is really nice, because you do come out with 740 speed, versus if you just hover, you would have 570. So it's about 50% faster if you do some drifts, plus it actually builds up your drift meter to get more turbos. On the second lap, you'll have an extra turbo. So after drifting, I turbo off here, air flip right, which gives you the momentum of the flip. So drift right to the corner, one long one right, one long one left, same pattern. It's not a lot of back and forths, so it shouldn't be too hard to replicate. Air flip left, as I said, after you feather your jumping. Drift left, air flip right, and continue drifting along here. You should get about 720 speed, 730, depending how you do. Here I drift this a little bit longer than usual. Hold this, and then I hold the air drift and turbo all the way through here, releasing the drift, and finishing. Normally this gets me somewhere in the range of 149 to 151. This time it got me about 150, which is a perfectly acceptable time at top 50 Unreal. On to Outpost. Outpost I've recently got a lot better at. Probably within the last week I've actually shaved off maybe 5 seconds off my time. Still quite a bit to learn, but should be, again, good enough to get top 100 Unreal easily. So one of the main time saves is this corner right here. Being able to take it and driving on the lava, I'm going to call it lava, but the side of the road as little as possible. Here I actually don't release this drift and I carry it over in the air. There's actually a bug that I found that if you release the drift, sometimes it'll just drop you to 570 speed at that location for no reason. Here I turbo, air flip right again, trying to drive along the track and drifting into the outpost. Yes, that is a little bit tricky. I actually miss a line right there with the lava, but I do jump it up. And I have an alternative route to Outpost right after this one that if you're not high Unreal, I'd recommend you do that instead. It's a little bit slower, but compared to the times you normally get, and it should still be very useful. So again, we drift around this corner, wait for our speed to start to drop to get close to 570, and then we release. We take this very far away, by the way. Notice we're like on the very far left-hand side of the road, rather than the right-hand side of the road. That allows us to take that sharp turn a lot easier. So right-hand side here is significantly better than the left-hand side for the shortcut, because the right-hand side you're able to drift right away, but if you try on the left-hand side of the lava pillar, often the road will just bounce you up, which makes it very hard. This section I break up into 2 parts, that first part of a release, and the second part right here. Try to hold it as long as possible for drifting. If you're, oh, I actually missed a turbo. That's okay, we're just showing you the route. It's not the end of the world. Whatever time we have, maybe subtract, half a second. Good enough. So again, we wait for our speed to start to drop. Look how far away we are on the left-hand side of that road so that we can take this with a little bit more space. We wait a second before we start to drift so that we're actually aligned with the left-hand side here. And again, so right-hand side, drift left once, drift right once, release. Drift left, air flip, and try to drift along the thing here. This pattern right here I recommend at all ranks you try to do, breaking this section into these 2 parts. It's very fast and it's a good compromise between the 2. I'm just short on my turbos, but that's fine. We lined it up perfectly so that we have it right to the finish line. And although we missed 1/2 of a turbo, not the end of the world, still get a 226, which again, these are perfectly acceptable times for top 50, top 100 Unreal. So I'm going to show you another route though that doesn't involve drifting into the outpost, because I'm sure for a lot of you that seems a little bit crazy, a little bit much. So let's do that one instead. So this will be a less mechanical version where I make a little bit sloppier lines, some more mistakes, etc. So same thing here though, drift along until you start to come out. Land on the left-hand side of that road. If you do and you just hold drift along there, you'll be pretty fine. Here I don't use any air flips because again it's less mechanical, so we just kind of hover along that wall. I do believe that most of you should be able to drift left, right, and left. After that, turbo. You want to turbo here because if you don't turbo and you come into the shed a bit slow, other people will turbo and they will bump you and kill you. I'm sure you've had it happen to you before. Turboing is very important to mitigate that risk of that happening. So rather than using both turbos here, we're going to use the second one drifting along here. The reason is we're going to have less drift than the other route, so we have to make it back somewhere if we're going to be able to use it. So we're going to do that across all the different laps. So again, look how far on the left-hand side of this road we are, so that when we come in here, we're not driving on the sides of the road, and we're all good. We're going to wait to start to drift on this section of the road until about halfway through. That way when our car's drifting left there and we got the shortcut, we're lined up for it. Again, drift left, drift right, drift left. Just long, slow, single drifts. Doing it faster both gives you less speed and overcomplicates it. I've been breaking this into 3 sections, one small one and then 2 bigger ones. The small drift is because you're not coming out with any drift speed, so what you want to do is get some drift speed. So we do one small one first so we're not at 570 going through it. Again, I don't think this is super mechanical, just a bit of drifting back and forth. We should be drifting less than most people at Elite. This section here might take some practice. I actually think Outpost is one of the best maps for working on drifting mechanics though. Again, so we're not drifting. We wait till we're about halfway up that road before we start drifting. And again, just 3 drifts. 1, 2, 3. And then turbo. And I highly recommend that people race this themselves. In fact, any of the maps that you're about to see, I'd say race them yourselves and then compare your times to the times that I'm getting and see, is what I'm doing really that tricky? I don't think so. Obviously on some of them they are, but I'm saying like on maps like this where I show you an easier route. And that gives us a 232, which honestly still probably wouldn't be the bottom of the pack even at top 200 Unreal. Okay, on to Windy Way, our last route. I've done 2 different videos on Windy Way where I've slowly got better from about 220 to 210. I've got significantly faster at the game since then. So I save my down flip there. A lot of people will side flip left to be able to line up with those boost pads. I save my down flip so that I can guarantee hit them. I find it's a lot more consistent and reliable, and it only loses about maybe a quarter of a second across all 3 laps. Okay, so let's talk into some details here. The inner section is a lot faster than the outer section, even though there's turbo pads over there. If you hit those 2 boost pads on an angle, you'll actually get to 1300 speed instead of 1200 speed. There's going to be a lot to cover, so I'm going to try to talk fast. Drifting in the dirt gives you a little bit of speed. You can ignore the make flip. Sorry about that. That's probably a little bit mechanical, but I use it often to realign myself back to the track. But again, you can hear the boost pads activate 3 times. So what you want to do is kind of hit them on a side angle so that you get 300 free speed from it. Here, notice I didn't use my thrusters and I didn't use my air flip until after the second part of the turbo, and then I didn't use the thrusters until after the air flip also. Again, we try to hit these on an angle, so we activate both of them, so that gives us 1300 speed. We drift left, air flip right to realign with the track. You'll notice me a lot of air flips. That's because they often give you just a little bit of extra speed. Like right here, some people will use it. But again, I prefer being able to hit the 3 boost pads a lot more consistently, forcing my car down on them, rather than flipping and trying to hit it perfectly. A good indicator that I'll be at a free turbo here is that it's about more than 25% filled for the turbo meter. So I wait, release my drift, and then I turbo around this section, and then turbo again. I would definitely make sure you know how many turbos you have before trying that in ranked, because often you'll be 1 short unless you get significantly better at drifting. And that got us nearly a 204, so that's a pretty decent time. I hope part 2 is useful. Let me know if it's helped you guys climb. If there's any maps you actually want a more detailed breakdown or alternative routes like I did with Outpost, let me know. I'm very happy to help everyone get to Unreal. Subscribe so you don't miss part 3, and join the Discord. It's in the description link. And we have a great time over there. We do giveaways, we do in-house racing, coaching for free, everything to help make the community a little bit nicer place. Have a good one.